The bulk of the playbook is a pacing system. It is a way of breaking down a very daunting long-term challenge into its component parts so that we don't become overwhelmed. So what I'm showing you is both what I've learned personally as a patient and what I've interviewed other patients who are really high-performance patients and their caregivers. And let me just emphasize the fact that caregivers are going through a parallel process here that requires time chunking or pacing for them as well. So it's just as important for the caregiver to pace as it is for the patient to go through pacing. So before I jump into the pacing system and how it works, I want to tell you a story. It may sound a little strange, but many years ago, when I was going through my cancer therapy, I started rock climbing in between chemo sessions. And I did it because it made me feel like the cancer didn't own me. It was part of that whole inner game. I wanted to just defy the cancer. And I think that was emotionally important to do. But what the climbing taught me was this whole process of pacing. You see, when you're climbing, as it turns out, you're climbing on a route, on a rock climb. You don't know what steps you're going to take before you take them. In other words, every step you take and every body contortion you make is improvised, and it's based on the situation at hand. And sometimes there's these holds and these little nubbins that you find on rock that you think are really going to be good and they're not good at all. And then just the reverse is true. You won't see anything at all, no holds, no patterns, and you won't know your way up, but you just manage to push your leg up enough, 1 inch, and that 1 inch will reveal to you the next step you're going to take. What makes this interesting and applicable to any adverse medical situation is the process of chunking everything down into steps, into really very small component pieces. And what you do is you celebrate each piece or you amplify on each piece. And that's what the most resilient people do as they plow through all these adverse circumstances. And this is what high-performance patients do. They take a huge problem, they break it down into small pieces, and it keeps them from being overwhelmed and being frozen by the magnitude of the whole thing. So practically speaking, how do we chunk down a huge long-term medical situation into its component parts? And that's what the left page, the one that you have right in front of you now that you're looking at, is we've broken down a huge medical problem into 3 day types. We have the treatment days or the action days, and you really do need to be on your game mentally, emotionally, physically. You need to kind of get psyched up for a surgery, for example. And again, I'm not just talking about the patient. I'm also talking about the caregivers. Those caregivers need to be on guard for a wide variety of things that the patient isn't aware of. And so it's really when you're really on high alert and you're very situationally aware. And what you'll find is those treatment days really drain out your energy. You put a tremendous amount of effort into those treatment days, and you need another day type to recover. So that's the middle portion, the rest and recovery days. I want to talk to you about the art of resting and recovery. And the reason I want to talk to you about this is because it is probably the heart of your activity here in your pacing system. And these are those middle days. These are those buffer days that we're calling rest, restore, recharge days. And what I'm going to tell you is what I have learned. And it's not because I was any good at this. I was actually horrendous at resting. I am one of the worst resters there is. So this is something that I've really had to drill into my head. And I think it's not all that uncommon that we do not know how to rest. And what I'm talking about here is not just sitting in front of a television and blindly staring out into space or just zoning out. And sometimes you need to do that. but there really is some activity going on when you're resting and recovering. So let's take these items one by one. First of all, resting, what is it? What are we trying to do? You're going to set aside time, and you're going to put in your schedule a time to rebuild, restore your energy. Okay? Sounds really basic, but if you don't set aside the time to do that, we tend to multitask and we tend to drain ourselves out of all of that energy that we really should be using to recover. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to try to find or develop ways, you may already have them, ways to recover your peace of mind. So this is peace of mind in the midst of adversity, in the midst of resistance and trauma and all of these things that you have in front of you. It's difficult to do, and it takes some focus and some intense way to recover a peace of mind. And that can be prayer, it can be deep meditation, it can be quiet time, but what they all really boil down to is some kind of reflective thinking. Be quiet, stop multitasking, and let go of all of the junk. Part of this restoration of your peace of mind, I call it recovery. It's a recovery of your orientation to the reason you want to heal. What is your primary life purpose? It may be that you need to get back to your family. It may be a wide variety of missions you have in your life, but really attempt to recover that primary life purpose. And the reason I say that, it sounds pretty obvious on the face of it. However, when you get completely disoriented by chemo and radiation and by surgery and all of the accumulative effect of all of this stuff, it is very disorienting, and you have to come back to why are you doing this to begin with. And that's what I'm really referencing here, is reorientation to your primary life purpose. This next piece, or the fourth R in our 5R recovery system and resting recovery system, is releasing. And you want to release all this emotional toxicity that's around you. In other words, all the adversity really has a reaction. It causes us to have a reaction. And that reaction is just human nature of fear and intimidation and all of those anxieties we have. And sometimes so that's all toxic to our system. And the more you review it, the more you live in it, the more you ruminate about it over and over and over again, it becomes your identity and it owns you. That's a problem because there is a physical response, a physical degradation, if you will, of your immune system when we live in all that toxicity. The other thing that you want to release and let go of are broken belief systems. In other words, a bunch of us have mistaken assumptions about everything. And as we go through some of this adversity, some of these broken belief systems just don't work for us anymore, and it requires us to change. And so when you let go and are willing to let go of a broken belief system, you really have an opportunity to spot some tools and resources and relationships that are all around you that you can't see when you're living inside of a fixed mindset or a broken belief system. Finally, the last thing I want to bring to your attention is a theme that comes up over and over again, and it really surprised me when I started to interview patients and high-performance caregivers. And they almost used exactly the same terminology. They said, I had to learn how to receive. And I thought, what are you talking about? In other words, there's help all around you. But a lot of times we feel like accepting the help is a way of kind of degrading our own self-worth, or in other words, we become less self-reliant, we become less independent somehow when we accept and allow help. So there's people that want to help you that don't even know you. They're all around. So accept it, allow it, and appreciate it. Assign value to it, and be thankful for all of the help you have around you. Those are the 5 R's of rest and recovery. And the quicker you learn that, the faster you're going to improve your health. Now that we've reviewed the 5 R's of rest and recovery, we need to schedule in some days that are play days. And again, play days are days where you're not even actively resting and recovering. You've now recovered that energy, and it's time to go out and just forget everything that you were doing and play. And it releases your brain to think about something completely different. Go back to doing music, to dancing, to having connections with friends and family, and just forget about all of the problems for a period of time. What's really important to understand is that this stuff all has to be scheduled. If it's not scheduled, it doesn't happen. And that's why I put it down into this category, or put it down into its component parts. The new ideas and brainstorming notes, I put that in there because there's a lot that you learn when you are resilient and learning to become resilient about yourself. And you're going to see new things that you noticed. You're going to have some new ideas, things that you might do when you get out of a hospital, or you get better, or new ideas. And it's just really important to start writing that stuff down so that you execute them in the future. And then in the far right bottom column, I want you to put down who are the key team players that are either on your medical team or on your caregiving team for that specific week. Because it's not always the same group of people. And it's really easy to get confused as to who's doing what when if you don't have your team players down for that week. The right-hand page of your playbook booklet workbook is your calendar system. And your calendar system is where you're going to put in the days of the month. So a Monday the 1st, for example. And then you're going to put in the day type underneath it. Is it a treatment day? Is it a rest recovery day? Is it a play day? And this will make really relevant and tangible and real the days that you're scheduling in there, because you're planning them out. And then the other thing that I want you to realize is that you have a way to track your prescription drugs that you may be taking by the day in the lower bottom row of this page here. So if you have to allocate a specific drug that you're taking, a prescription that you're taking on a Wednesday versus a Friday, or you're taking it twice a week or 3 times a week, you can put it all in here. And again, this is something that is valuable both for the patient and the caregiver. And it records what you're supposed to do, and you can share this information with a wide variety of people.